I'm not going to jeopardize my health and my well-being for some silly goal. That's, to me, just not worth it. Like, there's so much more in my life to enjoy besides that.
Welcome to the Uphill Athlete Podcast. My name is Alyssa Clark, and I will be your host today. And we are joined by Chantelle, one of my favorite guests / you're basically almost a co-host at this point. So Chantelle, it's great to have you on. I always love doing episodes with you. And we actually talked about this episode back in mid-December, I think. So I'm glad that it's coming to fruition today. Chantelle, thanks for being on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So our topic today is thinking about injuries and diving into, I'm calling it the season of injury. So Chantelle, what made you want to share about this topic in particular?
I think it came from, sometimes, Alyssa, you and I talk about, what are some things that are sort of happening in the athlete space? What kind of conversations are we having with athletes? What kind of issues are we seeing? What kind of conversations are coaches having? And one of the things that came up was injuries. And I think it came when we were talking about, like, what are the reasons people come to coaching? And one of the big reasons we see is that someone has been coaching themselves, doing their own thing, and they're in a pattern of chronically getting injured. And they're looking for a coach to help them because, of course, one of the biggest jobs of a coach is to stop people from doing silly things. And so I think sort of that's where it came from. And then it kind of spun into the fact that it's great that people are coming to get help to not get injured the next time or get injured in the first place, but also how challenging it is both mentally and physically for an athlete to go through that process of being injured and the journey through rehabilitation and return to sport.
Yeah, and I think that it's I've had a couple, like you were going through it. I had another friend who is going through a pretty long recovery cycle. And I'm sure that there's moments like, this is so silly, but I've just been out for a week being sick and I was watching someone run and I was like, I just want to run and feel good. And that's a week, not months at a time. And so it really is just such a psychological battle, I'm sure, to take on while you're working through that process.
Yeah, it is, because for a lot of us, our sports and our training for our sports take up a lot of our time and energy and thought and organization. And so when we suddenly have something that takes up, a significant amount of our time every day or every week, and that's gone, it can be really challenging to try to wrestle with that. And I feel like, now I'm old and maybe a little bit wiser. I've had a few times in my life where I've been sidelined by a big injury. And I feel like there are some great things that I have learned that I've, used with athletes to try to help them through their recovery journeys that, more recently, I had to kind of remind myself about and go through it again. And I think, as a coach, was able to kind of use that as a really good opportunity to practice what I've been preaching and to remember what that felt like and to try to come at it with some curiosity to see what I could learn about myself and how that could help me continue to help athletes in new and better ways.
That's a very positive way of looking at it. So can you walk me through what your season of injury was? What did it look like? And then kind of what the timeline was around it.
Oh, okay. So let me see. We are already in 2025. So in the fall,
in March.
I know.
It's
How did
March
that happen?
3rd. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
It's crazy. So in the fall of 2023, I had a really awesome summer. I had been running a ton, running really well. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I had turned 50, but I still felt like strong and good. And aside from running, I had also been putting some time and energy into another silly sport, which is dirt biking. And I've been working up to being able to ride this particular technical trail all summer, practicing different skills, and finally got to the point where I was ready to tackle it. And I went out with my friends and we were having just an awesome day. The weather was perfect. It was fall. The leaves were changing. You ever have that moment where you're like going along and you're thinking to yourself like, wow, today is a good day. I'm out here with my friends. I'm having a good time. I'm feeling proud of myself. I've managed all these challenging obstacles that I was scared about. And I knew there was one more obstacle on the trail. And I was riding with two friends, and one was going to go in front of me and stop before the big challenging thing so that I could take a look at it. But apparently she was having such a good time that she forgot to stop. So I was going along, having a great time, taking a few great swoopy turns. And suddenly there was a very sharp left turn that I obviously was not going to make at the speed that I was going. And so I had two options to, follow my bike off this little cliff where I was heading, or to jump off and let the bike go by itself, which is what I did. Long story short, the bike was fine. You'll all be pleased to know. But I ended up having a bit of an injury, rode the bike out, and eventually learned a couple days later that I had a fractured humerus and a torn labrum. So that was kind of a bummer. I had thought like, that sucked, but I'll come out and ride it again next week. Tylenol and adrenaline is a powerful combo.
It's a powerful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I opted to not get surgery because it was a nice clean fracture, and I was in a sling for 6 weeks. And then, the idea was that we would look at it again with the surgeon and see how it was doing. And so that's what I was faced with at first. The first chunk of stuff I had to contend with was that I would have 6 weeks of not being able to move my, thankfully, left arm. But okay, on the plus side, I had a right arm and I'm right-handed, so that was all right. And I had two functioning legs. So already I tried to think about like, okay, what are the things that I can control here? I felt very fortunate that it could have been a lot worse. I didn't have a head injury, no other injuries or anything like that. I didn't feel any fear about, getting on the bike again or anything like that. So from the beginning, I just tried to think about like, what were the positives that I could take away from this? And then what were the things, discussing with my physician, like what were the things that I could continue to do? So from the start, I think I probably harp on my athletes about this a lot, but like, it's okay to be disappointed or annoyed that you can't do certain things, but I try to like feel those feelings, but I put a time limit on them. So I could feel sorry for myself for like 2 days. And then when the 2 days was up, I had to start thinking about like, what were the things that I could control? So let's control the controllables. And what were the things that I could do? And I tried to think about like, well, I'm a coach. I coach people through this all the time. I know all the right things to say, right? Healing is not linear. So I prepare myself for that. It's not going to be linear. It may not go exactly how we think we're going to go, but I'm going to treat my recovery just like I would treat my training. So this was my training. And this is what I often tell athletes when they are recovering from an injury, of thinking about like, your recovery is your training. So what does that mean? It means you have to sleep well. It means that you have to fuel yourself well. When you are recovering from an injury, sometimes people think I'm moving less, so I'm going to eat less. And the opposite is true, right? Your body is under repair. Your body needs nutrients to be able to do those repairs. So things like increasing my protein intake, staying well hydrated, getting some form of movement every day that I was capable of doing. And sometimes that was just a dog walk. And then, when pain levels were better, then I was able to, get out and hike again. Luckily, I had 2 functioning legs, so I could get out and do that and try to think each day of like, what were the things that I could control? And just like a training plan, I would write those down for myself. This week, my goal is to do these particular things to take care of myself, and try to think about like I was every day. If I had a crummy moment where a bad thought would pop in, I would just remind myself, just like I would remind an athlete that's like, oh, I'm not doing enough. What do we say to them? Go back and look at your training log. Look what you did this week. So that's what I would do. I would remind myself, go back to my little list of like, what did I accomplish today that is helping me along this goal of recovering? What did I do this week? What can I do potentially differently next week? Or what could I try to do differently next week? So those were the things that I think were helpful, so focusing on what I could control, setting some little goals for myself so that I could break those down. And then I started thinking about like, what are the things we know about, that I know athletes go through physiologically and also mentally. And I kind of came back to a book that I read once by an author named, oh my goodness, I don't want to get her name wrong. She's got a double barrel last name. Carrie Jackson Cheadle. She wrote a fantastic book about mental strategies for athletes to recover from injury, and really got into the psychology of what athletes were going through while they were injured. And so I started thinking about like, what was her checklist? And I went back to that. So I'm going to share some of those things, and I can highly recommend the book. The book's called Rebound. And she also has, I've never looked at it, but it does exist. She also does have a Facebook page for recovering athletes recovering from injury, so they can get some community support and help each other out. So the 2 first things on her list were actually to focus on the controllable things, to set some realistic and positive goals. Another one that she has is visualization. So how can you stay connected to your sport while you're recovering? So that might be reading some race reports, or maybe it's planning a new goal that you want to have once you're finished, because you want to be able to think forward. You're not going to always be where you are right now. So thinking forward is okay. So thinking about what you might want to do later on can be particularly helpful, and reminding yourself of those things. And then also thinking about like, what else can you be doing? Like, in a sense, there's kind of a freedom when you're not training for 20 hours a week, right? Like, suddenly it's like, wow, I've just gained a significant amount of time in my life. So what can I do with this? So, when I think about for myself, what could I be doing with this time that I'm not training? Well, I was in the midst of moving, so that took up some time, and moving with only one arm took a significant amount of time. So, that was a positive, that I could do that. I decided to take a little trip to Canada and spend some time with my family, because I hadn't been in a little while, because I had, certain commitments with my own fitness goals or pacing and supporting athletes. So since I wasn't traveling to do any of those things, that, I could use that time for something else. I started working on a new certification to improve my knowledge and make me a better coach. So I just tried to think about like, what are some ways that I can still be growing myself, that's going to help me. And notice that most of those things had nothing to do with improving me as a runner or a dirt biker or anything else. Because a key thing that I have learned over time, and maybe this comes a little bit with wisdom of age, is I'm more than just a sport that I can do. I'm so many other things. I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a dog mom, I'm a learner, I'm a curious person. So there's a lot of other things that bring me joy besides, doing a race or having some kind of physical challenge. And so I think that was particularly helpful. Also thinking about like once I was able to, move a little bit better and I was able to start doing my rehab work with a physical therapist, that was also really helpful because I could, I had clearance to do more things. And I knew from being a physiologist, I knew from my studies about all these cool studies that I once had learned about with people that had injuries. And so they were not able, like in my case, I had use of one arm, but not two, that there's great scientific evidence to show that if you are training the one uninjured limb, that it actually still systemically helps the injured limb. So I tried to think about like, what do I know? Again, what do I know to be able to help myself? So as soon as it wasn't painful to lift weight with my good arm, I was lifting weight with my good arm in addition to obviously doing whatever lower body strength work I could do. And I think a big part of this certainly did help. And then also the fact that I was like physically, I was in a good place before I got injured. I had been working really hard to make myself resilient with strength training. And it was interesting, like after 6 weeks of my left arm being completely immobilized, my physical therapist saying like, wow, I'm quite shocked how little muscle atrophy you have in your arm after being immobilized for all this time. And when I was able to start lifting weight with that arm, I think the first week I could lift overhead, I could lift 6 pounds with my little weak arm. But 4 weeks later, I was lifting about 85% of what I could lift on my uninjured side. So the recovery process like really helped. So again, like thinking about the stuff that you can control and the stuff that you can do and staying positive, like staying positive to me was thinking about what other things that I could be doing, how else could I help myself, continuing to learn and celebrating all the small things that I was seeing. So the fact that I could even just lift my arm over my head was a big deal because that took a lot of work. And documenting that and realizing that it's going to be, a good thing for me to notice all those small things. And reminding myself also that like, this is a glitch, this is a glitch in time. In my case, sport is not my paycheck, right? This is something that I do for fun, something that I do for enjoyment, for community, for stress management, all those types of things. But it's not something that I have to do to earn money, thankfully. So another thing I remind athletes about is like, this is something that you get to do, and reframing myself, about like, this is fun. And at that point I started calling myself, I'm just a leisure athlete now. So this is fine that I'm a leisure athlete. I'm doing this for fun. There's other things that I also enjoy doing for fun. And I think this also helps with the mental side of things of that, like, this isn't everything. And not only is this sort of attitude has been helpful through the recovery journey, but just how I try to approach setbacks in general, it's a temporary thing in time. I've survived 100% of the crummy things that have happened to me in the past. And so I have pretty strong evidence, right, that I'm going to survive this one too. And understanding that there's not going to be a specific time frame, that I just really had to take it day by day and embrace the challenge and remind myself that, I'm going to get stronger from this, potentially physically and probably mentally. And that's going to help me in my sport and in my life anyhow. So I think that was particularly helpful. and staying connected to the sport. I mean, I guess I'm pretty lucky. I get to talk about sports, all different types of mountain sports every day, right? So I get to kind of live vicariously through my fellow coaches and all the different athletes that we work with. And so I think like trying to, engage with that and be happy that I'm still able to actively do something within the sports that I particularly enjoy. But I also was using that time to acquire new knowledge about how to help myself and help my athletes, how to support my athletes and my co-coaches, but also thinking about for those who are listening, how can you stay connected if you're not a coach? Plenty of ways. You can volunteer doing, and it doesn't have to be sport related. You can do some volunteer work potentially. You can help out volunteer at a race at an aid station. There could be something that you can do. Even if you were not as fortunate as me and have the use of two legs, there probably something that you could do, right, to help and still be part of the sport in some particular way. And so that, I think, sort of helps people, for those who maybe have quite a strong identity tie to their sport. I think that piece is particularly important. If someone is going through an injury and they feel like a really big gap or a really big sense of loss, I think this is a really good time to evaluate your relationship with sport.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because that's not a healthy one. If you feel like your life is over because you can't run, you probably don't have, probably a good time to look at what else is in your life besides sport, right? So what is your sense of community look like? What do your friendships and relationships look like? What other kind of things do you enjoy doing? And I think that's a really dangerous thing when someone completely falls apart because they don't have something else. We want to make sure that we build in more stuff so that sport isn't the only one and only thing that's driving us forward on a daily basis. That isn't really very helpful. And I think we can all think of maybe instances when we were younger where that might have happened to us, or people that we know where we see like they are just not helping themselves because they just cannot, all they can focus on is the stuff that they can't do. And that's not allowing them to think about the other stuff that's in their life that they can do and trying to see it as, a learning experience, an opportunity, because you can't change it, right? Something's happened for whatever reason. You've injured yourself, you're broken or hurt or injured or ill. You can't change that. But like, there's so many other things that we can influence that I think are good to take a look at, going through that. And not to say that it's not okay to be like mad or upset, you will have those
definitely.
times. Yeah, you will have those times.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was amazing advice. But, how did you handle those low moments where, it's like, okay, you put in a lot of steps to kind of like help you, but I'm sure there are moments where you're like, this just sucks. Like how long did you allow yourself to kind of be in that and then say, okay, now we're going to move on?
I think that's a great question. I think something that I learned that has been sometimes helpful to me is, it probably comes from therapy at some point, but like feel the feelings, but ditch the story. So I'm feeling shitty.
Okay.
I can't do what I want to do today, or my friends are going to do this thing. Oh, now now finally the snow's coming in and everyone is skiing and snowmobiling and doing all these fun winter activities. And like, all I can do is walk. Like that sucks. Wah, wah. I suck, blah, blah, blah. You know how it can spiral.
Oh, yeah.
So like the feel the feelings part is like, yeah, that sucks. I'm missing out on these activities and opportunities with my friends. That stinks. That's a valid feeling. And I feel annoyed about that. And I feel irritated about that, or I feel sad about that, or whatever it is. So those are valid. I'm going to feel those things, but I'm not going to like take a bath in them. You know, like I'm going to limit, like, okay, I can feel those things, but like eventually I got to get over my damn self. And okay, I felt the feelings and there they are. And now it's time to think forward. So like, how can I still stay involved with that? I can meet my friends for a drink, right? When they finish skiing or when they finish the activity. I have more time. Maybe I can offer to host the friends with some snacks after the activity, and they can tell me all about it and how much fun they had. And I can have some way to take part in that. And the ditching the story part is like, this isn't forever. Like, it's not always going to be like this where I'm going to feel like I'm excluded from things or I can't do the things, or it's just for now. So like, also taking a step back to think about like, what other stories am I maybe attaching to this? And maybe that's a story about identity, or it's a story about like, my friends are going to forget about me, or I'm going to feel left out, or like, none of that crap is true. Right. So again, like feel the feelings, ditch the story, and then like come back to some of the other things, right? Like, how can I stay connected to my friends when I can't necessarily do the same activities that they're doing? I can also feel wait around to be invited to things, because maybe your friends feel like maybe you're in a delicate situation and they're not really sure. They maybe feel bad about inviting you to do something and they don't know where you're at in your journey yet. So it's probably better to see, like, maybe you invite your friend, like, hey, I'm going to go to the hot spring, or I'm going to go to this yoga class, or I'm going to go on a dog walk. Do you want to join me? So like, get over yourself and invite people to do the things that you're going to do if you're feeling like you want to stay connected, because you can't expect other people to know where you're at on the journey. So, it's your friends and the people in your life, they are going to care about you and they want to support you, but they don't always know how. And so, have you ever been in a situation where, you see your friend has something going on and you want to help, but like, you're really hesitant, right, to ask. So try to remember that, how that feels, like offering help, how sometimes that can be difficult. And just remember, like, the people who love you, like, they want you to be okay and they want to support you. And it will be easier for them to support you if you're willing to just ask for what you need. And if you ask for what you need, you might be really shocked about what you get, because how many times do people offer you, like, is there anything I can do for you? Like, no, I'm okay. I'm good, because you don't want to inconvenience. Like, you know what? Yes. Could you please pick up these 5 things at the grocery store for me? Or I just moved into a new place and I have a couch that's being delivered and I don't know how I'm going to get it up the stairs and in the house. Could you help me with that? So just ask, because you would offer, you would want to be able to help people yourself, right? So just like, get over yourself and, examine those stories that are going around in your head and really examine those. Like, is that true? Is that logical? And then, I would think about like how many times I catch myself, on a regular basis when I catch myself in some silly little loop. Like, is that true? And I often will like start laughing at myself at how silly some of the stories are that I tell myself that are totally unfounded.
Absolutely. I also think, I'm trying to think of how to word this, but basically, I think most of us have a friend or two that don't normally do, say, they might ski, but they don't snowmobile. They might bike, but they don't run. And there's maybe a season where they feel more left out because they're not as involved. It's like, hang out with that friend, or that friend's really artistic and like loves to do paint and sip. And like, you never go to paint and sip because you're always doing your sport. Like, maybe that's the time to connect with that friend more and really lean into that friendship. And like, I've always found that, I have my sport friends, and they're very, I mean, I love them to pieces, but I also seem to have kind of friends that, like, yes, they know I'm a runner, but like, I'm not, my value to them has nothing to do, and not that my value to my running friends is my running, but like, that's what we go and do together versus other friends where it's like, yeah, we go out and have nice meals, or we listen to music, or, you know, they're like, oh yeah, Alyssa runs, but like, that's just a small part of the friendship. And so I feel like maybe leaning into those friends that maybe have felt a bit left out because, you know, you're spending 5 hours running on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's go like walk on the beach or pick up seashells or something like that. And maybe leaning into some of their, you know, hobbies that maybe you've always been curious about, but haven't really ever had the time to.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Or even if you're the type of person that only has the sporty friends, like look around in your community and see what's going on. Again, like what are those things that you typically don't have time for? And maybe it is signing up for a paint and sip class, and you might make a great, cool new friend. Or going to an event that you typically wouldn't go to, or trying something new, some new activity, or just trying to think about like, you know, being curious about like, what can I learn about myself during this time, rather than really just being focused on, I think the key is just, you know, what can you learn from it and what can you add to your life experience, rather than being really focused on what has been taken away from you during this time.
Yes, so true. Did you feel, and kind of expanding on the community piece, did you feel like you could still be a part of it by doing those, like by maybe putting in a little bit of extra work to show up at the end or to, you know, host? Or did you feel at times that you were pushed out a bit of whatever that community was at the time?
No, I feel really fortunate, that I have really good people around me and good friends around me. And I feel like, it wasn't too hard for me to be able to stay connected when I put out the effort. But what I realized was that it was hard for them because they'd be like, oh, well, we thought about inviting you, but we didn't know if that would be, you know, if that would be sad for you.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about this awesome rad ski day that we just had, and like you weren't skiing, you know, like, does that feel weird for you? So like, that's something that I learned, you know, of just being able to like, you know, trying to be very sensitive. They maybe would have been excluding me if I hadn't voiced like putting that forward, like, oh, what are you up to? Oh, you guys are doing this. Oh, how would I meet you afterwards? And so once I started offering those things and like was, you know, kind of showing up, then I was like, okay, we know that you're okay. We know that it's not going to be bothersome and that it is kind of fun, you know, a fun way to stay connected. I think that was particularly helpful, you know, for them to get some cues from me rather than, you know, it being the other way around, like me waiting for them. It worked pretty well. And I think, you know, for me, it was kind of a way to still stay connected and for them to stay connected with the process, because then I would see them more regularly. I could talk about what was happening, what I was able to do. You know, they could share in my excitement when I was finally cleared to do Nordic skiing. You know, like that was the first sport that I was allowed to do again. And then I was able to start running again. And, you know, I had a race that I had been training for that was going to be in June. So I was feeling a little bit nervous about whether or not I was going to do that. So like, that was a big deal for me to know, like, oh, when I was finally able to run again, that like, okay, maybe this is going to happen, you know, but also in my brain trying to prepare for the fact that, however, you know, it was just a 50K race, not a super long race. But when I, you know, had quite a bit of time where I wasn't running, I knew it was going to be somewhat of a challenge to try to be ready for it in time. So it was great to have friends who understood my journey, where I could like share about those things, get it out of my head. So again, it's easier, I think, to catch yourself in that crummy story loop if you're saying it out loud rather than just letting it live internally.
Definitely. I've started doing this a lot more as part of my own growth, where I'll be like to my husband, I know this is dumb, or this is like, doesn't make any sense. I have to say it out loud because it's bothering me, and then it will make me feel better. And he'll be like, sure, I'll say it. And he'll go, that's silly. I'm like, I know it's silly, but now I feel better because I said it out loud. Not that he's saying I'm being silly. He's just like, that's a ridiculous thought. Yeah. And it helps so much just to like be like, yeah, I hear it out loud. And it is as silly as it was in my head, but I couldn't let go. Actually, I am, first off, I feel like the fact that you just said, 50K is really short. So it's, it's like, oh my gosh, we're been in the ultra running world too far. We're like, gosh.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not like I had a June 100K or 100 miler,
Fair. But how do you like to handle with your athletes and also with yourself of, it's exciting to have that goal as something to kind of anchor yourself in a way, but also not using that goal so much in case it doesn't work out. Because there's always that chance, like, you're not actually ready for that. So how would you help yourself, and also how do you help athletes navigate kind of that balance?
I think the thing is like not having that as the sole goal. Like my overall, my big goal at the beginning of last year was not to, go and crush this race. My goal was to have full use of my arm again and be able to avoid surgery. That was my goal. If I could do this race, like that was going to be great, but like it wasn't, I wasn't attached, allowing myself to kind of get attached to this race in any way. And the race didn't have any other meaning to me. It was like, okay, that's there. It's on the calendar. It'll be fun to do. But if I am not able to do it, like, that's fine. I'll go and I'll volunteer at the race. I'll go and volunteer at the race and I'll be there. And I know I have friends running, and an athlete that I coach is the race director of that race, he and his wife. So it's going to be fun anyway. So whether I'm running or not, if I'm not running, then I can go and be useful and I can help out at an aid station or doing something else. And I think I try to do the same with athletes, of like not being too, and that's for any goal. This is like, regardless of having an injury or not, you have this goal of, doing this climb or doing this race. And that's a really great goal. But if you're too focused on that summit, you're not going to put enough into the journey of getting to that summit or getting to that finish line. So always remembering that, it's kind of cliche, but not really, it's about the journey, not the destination. So it's like all those days of training and the hard work that you did and the sacrifices that you might have made with your other obligations in your life, all of those things that you do, those are not for nothing, So if for whatever reason you cannot make the start line, or you don't make the finish line, or you don't get to the summit, that time is not wasted. That, that hard work is not wasted. The things you learned about yourself, the way that you improved maybe your health, your fitness, your strength, your physical and mental resilience, all of that is not lost, so that, I think that's the most important thing, is like not being too attached to that particular outcome. Because otherwise, if you're just, maybe we spoke about this in our podcast we did, Alyssa, about UTMB, if you're too focused on like the outcome or the perfection or whatever, you lose the joy. And,
Yep.
you lose the joy in the process and all the time preparation. Like, that's not for nothing.
Well, and also, I mean, it's when you hold one outcome, I just always think of it as like like, to be honest with her, I was like, well, before I kind of like reassessed it, I was like, well, there's only one outcome that could make me happy from the race. It's like, well, that's a really narrow-minded way of looking at a race. It's like, if you have only one way of a race that has millions of variables, that's pretty rough. Like, that's a really slim chance of you being happy and a really strong chance of you being pretty upset. Yeah. And I think the biggest piece too is, besides, I mean, this is talking about, like, we'll say placement, where I actually really encourage, like, you know, I do think there's something to be said about being like, I really want to win a race. Like, I want to win this race. I believe I'm capable of doing that. But I always try to frame it as like, I believe that I am capable of doing this and I'm going to do the best that I'm capable of doing on that day. And I think the outcome could be winning. But I'm not saying that I need to make,
or one of the outcomes. One of the outcomes could be. Yeah.
Yes. But you just have too many factors where it's like what I think is so funny too, not funny, but like ironic, is say, okay, you've rehabbed your shoulder injury, everything's going well, and then the day before you get strep throat, where it's like, there's
funny story. You remember what happened to me last year?
You did get sick.
I was training really well. You know, I was training, and I think it was 3 weeks before the race. 3 weeks before the race, I was training and had like a silly little tumble, and I have like, I cut up my hand. I still have like scars across all these knuckles, which is silly, and ended up getting a bruised patella. So leading up to the race, so for almost 3 weeks before the race, I couldn't run at all. I could walk, but it was excruciating to run flat, and it was excruciating to run downhill. I could hike though. I could hike uphill just fine. And so I had a couple of choices, you know, for the race. I could, and again, I was trying my best to not be, you know, having just one possible outcome. So my option would have been to drop out of the race altogether. Option B was to drop to a shorter distance. Or my third option was just see how far I could get. And the first 2/3 of the race were all uphill. And I knew that going uphill was not causing me any pain. And I communicated that to the race director and said, like, what do you think? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. Just go and try. And if something happens, you can hang out at an aid station. You can help out till the end of the race and then get a ride back down. No big deal. So that's, you know, I totally took the pressure off, and I just went, and with the goal of like, my goal was to see how far I could get. And turns out I could get 2/3 of the way through. And
all the uphill.
All the uphill. And I was crushing it. And then, you know, I knew that wasn't going to be good for me to continue to go. Like, yes, I could have continued to go, but I knew it was going to be very slow, and it was going to cause myself a worse injury. So I just decided to stop, and I hung out at the aid station, and I had a great time hanging out, watching people coming in until that particular aid station was finished. And then, you know, a bone bruise takes a long time to heal. And I was like, okay, well, looks like I'm not going to run for a while. I rode my bike a couple times, and it didn't hurt to bike. And then I thought, like, oh, you know, I've been maybe thinking about getting a new mountain bike for a while. If I'm going to be not able to run for a while, like, maybe this is the time. And, you know, without a second thought, decided, like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That I'm not going to stress about the running. I'm not going to stress about, I'm going to, again, control the controllables. And I, you know, and made a new goal for the summer, you know, instead of thinking about like, okay, getting back to running and being able to, you know, race again this year and like having to make up for something. I'm like, screw it. I'm just not going to have a running goal. I'm going to go and I'm going to run for fun, but I'm also going to make a new goal, and I'm going to put some time and effort into becoming a better mountain biker. And that's what I did for the summer. And I had a great time. So I think like that process, like it was such a short setback, and so many friends were like, oh my gosh, how are you going to feel about that? You know, you were like, but I wasn't attached right? I wasn't attached to that goal. I wasn't attached to, and it's not my career. Like it's just something that I do for fun. And now I just joke, with all my friends and even my athletes, like I'm just a leisure athlete now. Like my goal is to, I'm coming up on another birthday. My goal is to stay strong and healthy and be able to do a variety of the things that I like to do for as long as possible. And I'm not going to jeopardize my health and my well-being for some silly goal with one space and time on the calendar. That's, to me, just not worth it. Like there's so much more in my life to enjoy besides that.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, that's when you have something very singular on your calendar, you're going to have to recover you're going to have to taper for it. You're going to have to recover from it. And it's going to take a while. And it's funny. I had a friend once who was like, she's had some very successful races, and there was one year and she was just like, yeah, I'm not racing because there's too many things I want to do. I don't want to have to stop everything to race and then start it up again and then take time off and then start it up again. Like, I just want to go do the things. And I thought that was really profound on her part. She was quite young at the time, making that statement where she's like, I want to go run in Joshua Tree. I want to go all of these and do all of these things. And, racing and the kind of what it forces you to focus on just doesn't fit into that scheme right now. I was like, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever
and it's just it's a right now, right? It's just a right now. Like
exactly.
It's not forever. It's not forever.
Yeah. Whenever I'm tapering, I think of her and I'm like, oh, she was so smart. I don't want to taper either. And then, it's just,
and that's the thing, like, recovering, just like when you're recovering from a race, it takes time, right? Recovering takes time, healing takes time, and it isn't linear. And so you might feel like, someone who is like doing a couple of different races in a year, and they, how many times do we see this where someone, is planning out their race calendar and they plan it just like they did the last 3 years. And then they do their first race of the season. And, 4 weeks later, they're still feeling like crap and they're just not recovering, like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? It's like, usually I recover faster. And there could be a multitude of reasons why they're not recovering the same way. It could be, maybe they really went into the well during that race. Maybe something else happened for whatever reason. Maybe there's other extenuating circumstances going on in their life, but there's no magical formula for how long it's going to take to recover from a race, from an illness, from an injury. And certainly there are times where people do, come back a lot stronger physically and mentally, but there are also times where they don't. And, if you're really just so stuck on that identity piece or external factors, like, oh, what are people going to think if I never race another 100 miler and I just do 50 Ks? What are people going to think? It's like when people have this external stuff going on, that's not going to put them in a good place, right? So it really needs to be like, what's your reason? What's your purpose? And you're allowed to change that over time, with time. And you don't owe anyone any explanation. Like your friend who just decided she wanted to do something different for herself. Good for her, because there's a lot of pressure, I think, in this day and age to be doing all the things and to be performing at a particular level or doing these particular races or doing these particular climbs. And, if you change your pattern, maybe some people have something to say about that, but it's really none of their business.
It's really not. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was going down the 200-mile track and I just decided I did a couple of things and was like, I just don't enjoy sleep deprivation that much in this stage of my life. Like maybe I'll go back to it in, late 30s, 40s. It's not that I'll maybe never do it again, but it's like, that just does not excite me right now. Like I want to run 100 miles really fast or as fast, I'm saying that quotation marks. And it's just, it's like, just because, so, and I get all the time, people are like, well, when are you doing another 200? Because like, that makes sense. I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm doing fine at the hundreds right now. Like, I think, but yeah, I get that question a lot. I'm like, it doesn't appeal to me right now. It doesn't serve where I want to be at this moment. Doesn't mean it can't change. It doesn't mean I'm not psyched for everyone else. Like, so psyched. I love Cocodona is just popping off. It's so cool, but like, it doesn't really appeal to me right now, and that's okay. And you can change.
And you can change. You can do different things. I know I get sometimes people when I got it a lot when my accident happened, and people are like, oh, how did that happen? And I would say like dirt biking. I can't imagine someone like you dirt biking, injured. I'm like,
honestly, it's one of the many reasons I love you so much. But like,
why? Why is that so hard to imagine? It's like, it's kind of funny. Like, well, I don't imagine you to be that kind of person. Like, I see you as this, and like, well, we're all more than just one thing or one type of race or one type of activity. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how people tend to paint you a certain way or see you a certain way or have these expectations of you, perhaps, like in your case, like, when are you going to do another 200 miler? It's, I don't know. I think it's kind of like a personal question. Like, if someone it's like when someone has a baby and then their baby's like 2 months old and they're hassling them like, oh, when are you having another one? It's like, maybe some questions don't need to be asked. I don't know.
This is very true. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground on this, but I do want to ask you, what was the most fun hobby that you picked up during this time that you probably never would have done if you hadn't had that injury?
Painting.
Love it.
Yeah, because I don't see myself as a creative person, but it was something that I could do. And so I took a couple of little painting classes. It was quite relaxing.
I love that.
It was quite relaxing. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. Like, again, like, it's, these things are really hard and they're hard to go through. But like, no one is alone here. And when we do the types of things that we do, unfortunately, we are going to get injured. So I think like the best things, obviously train smart to start with, as much as possible, avoid the overuse injuries, fuel yourself well. We know that fueling ourselves well is really important to bone health and to performance and to our recovery. So training smart is a really important first step here. And then if you do get injured, if you have been taking good care of yourself and you have been strength training and managing your training well, that depending on the type of injury that you have, it can actually, lessen the impact of certain injuries. And help your recovery along. So I think we can't really stress that enough. And then unfortunately, when these things happen, like, think about some of the steps that we talked about, controlling the controllables, continue to set some little goals for yourself, stay positive. You can feel the feelings, like feel the negative feelings, but maybe don't live there, stewing in those juices. Like, put a time limit and, try to move forward from it. Stay connected to your sport if you can in some way. Ask for help. I can't stress that enough because so many of us are bad at that. And be patient with yourself. Again, it's, whatever you may be going through and where you're at, it's important to trust the process that you're going through. Get good medical care and advice. Don't rely on the internet or Reddit or whatever guru that you might be following on Instagram. Like, get proper medical help and guidance, and do everything that you can to support that. Think about this as you're training. So good sleep, good food, balancing stress load, all the same stuff you do in training. Treat it just like training. And hopefully some of these things, can help you recover physically, but also, mentally help you stay a little bit more sane.
Love it. Well, that is, I think, a great place to end this. The one thing I will say also is burying your face in a fluffy animal is a great way.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Animals are so great for these moments too. If you love animals, yeah, they're truly, I think, godsends when you're injured or sick or you just need a fluffy thing to love you unconditionally. I think that
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great additional point, Alyssa.
Awesome. Well, Chantelle, thank you so much for being on and sharing your story and how you've kind of worked through this. And I'm super glad that you were on the other side. And we really appreciate you, as always.
Oh, thanks, Alyssa. It was great to chat.
Thank you for listening to the Uphill Athlete podcast. If you can rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, that helps us help more athletes. It's not just one, but a community. We are Uphill Athlete.